your week going so far?
Yeah, can't complain, man. Just been working. How about yourself?
It's just been pretty chill here, just one day at a time.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much how you gotta do it, man. Can't think too far ahead.
Exactly, man. Exactly. So, what are we talking about today?
So today, I want to talk about like how digital reality is cheapening experiences. And kind of like explore how friendships and things like that change over time. So, you remember how like last episode we were kind of discussing, before it started cutting in and out, like how the experiences back then as kids were much more richer because we actually met up face to face, and everybody wasn't locked into this digital world.
Right. I mean, how it used to be when we were kids, you'd be outside until it got dark, and then your parents would say, okay, come in when it gets dark. But like when it was light out, you'd be out there riding bikes, riding skateboards, rollerblades, razor scooters, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of stuff.
Exactly. And you just named on like, just a few of the things that we did, even like little kids, they might be playing marbles. Like if there's a forest nearby, you explore the forest. There's just so many different activities versus now, all the kids are indoors on the tablet, probably playing like Roblox or there's just not that variety nor that face to face interaction. So like when these kids think about their childhood, like what memories are they really gonna have? Like, oh, I play a Roblox with such and such.
Yeah, they're just going to be remembering, oh, I was on my tablet at that age and I was playing Words with Friends or playing Scrabble or I'm playing Call of Duty or, just like kind of very cheap experiences, not rich like we had where we're outside, we're playing with each other, we're having a lot of fun and all that.
Exactly, and I think memories are probably one of the most important things you can have. Like, sure, money's cool, but when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be thinking about that pile of money in the bank. You're going to be more so reflecting on your experiences you had.
Yeah, for sure. It's all about the experiences and what you can get out of your childhood. I think we had really rich childhoods. Like you said, the title of today, digital reality is creating loneliness. These kids don't really know what it's like to experience life the way that we did. You'd go outside and there'd be like 10 kids outside, and you just jump into an activity, play some basketball, baseball, kickball, all kinds of stuff like that. But these kids now, it's like they're on their cell phone, they're on their tablet, they're isolated, they're indoors, they're not going outside, they're not eating well, they're eating McDonald's and a bunch of junk like that. So all kinds of issues these days, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the coolest things is as a kid, like you go on, you have all of your friends on gathering together at one house on the street, then maybe y'all walk to another street. There's a whole nother different group of kids doing something else. It's like an adventure.
Exactly. Yeah, like I remember we would play basketball in front of my house. We had a basketball hoop, and there were kids like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 blocks away who also had a basketball hoop. So we would link up with them and play every now and then.
Yeah, exactly. And you could probably remember all those experiences vividly versus, oh, I was just on a server playing Roblox with Joey or something. Like what kind of memory is that? So Armani says, let me read this comment. Suicide rates for children are increasing due to the unrealistic expectations bombarding our youth. So yeah, I can.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, in one of our other podcasts, Kevin, we were talking about how a lot of these like preteen and teenage aged girls are becoming bulimic, they're becoming anorexic because they're comparing themselves with Instagram models, Instagram influencers. And mind you, these people, these influencers and these models, they're photoshopping the hell out of their photos. So it's not even actually what they look like, but you have these young girls looking at all the social media and they're comparing themselves to it, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not skinny enough, so I'm not going to eat."
Exactly. Like, the digital reality is giving them a false perception of reality and they're trying to live up to it. And, another big issue is if you're in a digital world all day, then you're not really learning social skills. So you're going to have like this social anxiety. You're not going to be accustomed to going out and talking to people in real life because, it's just so comfortable doing it from the internet and you're just interacting with these people through text or, just like a very cheapened form of interaction.
Yeah, like you mentioned before, it's really cheap. It's just okay. I'm going to text you. Okay, maybe we'll do a phone call, but like from what I noticed, a lot of people, even my age, a lot of people don't want to do phone calls anymore. They just want to text, which is fine. But like you said, it's kind of more about like it's a cheaper experience than like a phone call.
Right. And phone. I was saying, phone calls are even cheaper than meeting face to face. But it's just so convenient. We trade in convenience for depth of experience. It's kind of like eating at McDonald's versus a home cooked meal. Like the home cooked meal takes a lot longer, but it's much more flavorful. Whereas that fast food interaction, it's really convenient, but you don't remember it. I would say it's unhealthy for you.
Yeah, I mean, because it's really easy to just sit inside, isolate yourself, just be scrolling through Reddit, scrolling through TikTok, scrolling through Instagram. Like it's so easy to do that and just like watch the hours go by, watch the hours go by. But these are like really cheap experiences compared to our youth when we're out there, we're playing basketball, we're playing kickball, t-ball, rollerblading, all kinds of activities going on, all kinds of kids from all over the neighborhood. Just lots of fun and lots of like you're saying, like memorable moments versus these cheap experiences on tablets and whatnot.
Yeah, when you go walking around outside now, it's like a ghost town. There's hardly anybody outside. All the kids are inside, and like Armani mentioned the word incel, and a lot of those school shooters. These were like especially boys who are very isolated, who feel like nobody liked them. They didn't get the attention they wanted from the women, so they kind of blew up. So, I think all of this isolation can also lead to producing, I would say teenagers who end up becoming violent because they're so lonely and they just blow up.
Yeah, there was that incel case in Southern California. I think it was like Santa Barbara area, and the kid was, I think he was like the son of a famous screenwriter. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that. If you can recall that for the audience.
Yeah, I don't even really remember it either, but I just remember there was like a news story about an incel. This kid, he wasn't really getting attention from women or girls, and he ended up, bringing a gun to school.
Yeah, exactly. So, all of this digital isolation is not really good. I think parents have to start taking active steps to limit that and actually force their kids to go outside because the kids are being robbed of uh, just a richness of their childhood. Like you remember back in our day, we might have had like a boom box or something, and You hear a song come on for the first time and you associate that memory with that song. But, if you're online all the time, you're not really going to be able to even associate songs with any like important memories.
Yeah, because it's sort of like, what lasting memories are you going to really have about, oh, I was texting my friend on my cell phone and we are talking about X, Y, and Z. It's just like you said, it's a very cheap experience compared to like going out there and playing kickball with some of your buddies.
Exactly. So because with text you're only using like maybe one or two sensory modes like your eyes and your ears versus all of your senses when you're interacting in person. um, and I think a lot of business, a lot of real networking is done in person. So if you're super social awkward because you're never getting out of the house, you're really going to be stunted as you grow up because it's going to be hard for you to get out there and network and speak with people effectively.
I mean, like even now for me, like I definitely feel like I isolate myself a lot more than I used to. I think COVID kind of changed the landscape for a lot of people. It got people more comfortable with staying inside, being on tablets, laptops, cell phones, texting people instead of calling people. I think that's kind of been normalized in this post COVID world.
Exactly. The experiences are getting cheaper and cheaper. It went from kind of like meeting in person, phone call, now to texting. So Armani says, incels have no social skills if they spend hours playing computer games. Parents are online. Cool kids online won't interrupt them. Digital babysitter. Yeah, it is like a digital babysitter. Like if your kids are just stuck on a game, that means you don't have to really go and see what they're doing. You could just leave them in the room while they're in their little digital world.
Exactly. And I mean, like, it's not like we didn't used to play computer games or video games when we were kids. But at the same time, like, if it was a nice day, we were outside. We were running around with, neighborhood kids playing different games, just having fun, like building, rich experiences. Whereas, how rich of an experience can you have when you're text messaging like your buddy?
Exactly. And the cool thing too is that people were immersed in the moment, whereas like now, um, with these like digital devices, all your interactions are recorded. So, you have to be very careful about what you do, versus like as a kid, you can make a mistake, you might get laughed at, but it gets forgotten about because everything isn't recorded like it is now.
Right, exactly.
So like, okay, if you were a parent, what would you do with your kids? Like, how would you ensure that they're not being swallowed up in that digital world?
I think I would limit the screen time. I would limit the phone time, limit the tablet time, limit the laptop time. Just make sure that they're if it's a night, especially if it's a nice day out, make sure they're getting some sun, hanging out with neighborhood kids, playing some games. Just getting out there and doing something versus just staying inside on a tablet all day long playing video games or just like I said, browsing social media, TikTok, Instagram. These are like really, really cheap experiences compared to playing a game of kickball with your buddies.
Yeah, I forgot about like kickball, dodgeball, hopscotch, jump rope. Like it was like so many different activities.
Lots of different, hopscotch. That brings you back. Or they, what was it called? The jump roping, the double dutch or
Yeah,
something like
double
that.
dutch. Yeah, yeah.
Double dutch, yeah.
Street football, basketball, water guns, water balloons. Like it was like okay, Armani said, notice how toys like bikes, scooters, skateboards for outdoor play are not as popular as video games for present. Yeah, exactly. And you remember like all the collectibles, like baseball cards, X-Men cards, etc.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, back in our day, baseball cards, football cards, X Men, especially X Men. X Men was huge when we were growing up. They had the cartoon on Saturday mornings.
Right. Yeah, it was just cool, like having collections of things. Like you have a binder of baseball cards, you take them to your friend's house, or a binder of CDs, and you end up trading them. I don't know, like with everything being digitalized, is just there's so many interactions that end up missing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's like in this post-COVID world, it's a whole new landscape. I think not just kids, but adults as well are just used to cheapening their experience by just texting people and not actually getting on the phone and talking to people. Because for whatever reason, COVID has just changed reality for us now, it seems like.
Armani brought up a good point. You can limit the time for your own kids, but if other kids are online, there's no one to play with. So yeah, I think we got to go back to that community village concept. Like parents have to get together and talk and do things in conjunction with each other. Like they all say, "Hey, y'all need to go outside." You know, but I do feel like modern society, again, another effect of the digital age is neighbors don't even know each other. Everybody's so isolated. It's like you could be living next to somebody for like 5 years and you never held a real conversation with them.
Yeah, I mean, I found that to be. I used to live out in LA for like the better part of 10 years, and I felt like out there, no one knew their neighbors really. But I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, kind of working class city, and all the neighbors knew each other, like, and not just like one set of neighbors, like literally all the neighbors on a block knew each other, would look out for each other's kids. If someone's messing up, they're gonna give your parents a call and let them know you're messing around with stuff you shouldn't be doing. It was more like a collective environment when we were growing up.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Like it seems like kids nowadays they don't even have sleepovers because none of the parents really know each other and they don't really trust their kids going over to someone else's house. So they kids are missing out on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, when we were kids, you definitely had sleepovers regularly, like especially in the summer, you'd stay over your friend's place. I mean, you might be inside, you might be playing video games, but at least you're hanging out with other humans and you're interacting in person with actual humans, as opposed to now these kids are just sitting inside in their room on their tablet and just totally isolated. They might be communicating with people on their tablet, but outside of that, it's just total isolation now.
I mean, you're interacting with someone, but you're not like you're interacting with a device and then it's being transmitted as a signal to someone all the way over the world or whatever. So, what are you really interacting with? You're interacting with a hunk of metal versus like a real live human. And I think that's going to have major repercussions, if things aren't changed. I think, me and you, we're around the same age group. So we kind of grew up, like I was saying, the golden age, like in the 90s, where technology existed, but it hadn't yet quite yet dominated. So we can kind of see both sides of the coin.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Because I mean, we had technology, we had computers, floppy disk computers and all that like old school stuff. But at the same time, we knew how to go outside and play some basketball, play some kickball, dodgeball, go sledding in the winter, go on hikes in the woods. We did stuff. It didn't matter, who you were with, but we did stuff. And now I feel like these kids are just not really doing anything. They're just alone in their room on their cell phone, on their tablet, scrolling TikTok, scrolling Reddit, Instagram, and it's just like it's such a cheap experience compared to when we were kids.
Exactly. And, parents, they have to be more proactive in talking to other parents and making sure that, as a group, that these kids are doing something other than being trapped into their little digital cages.
Yeah, exactly, Kevin.
Like, who knows, like, what these people who are feeding them the content, like, the content is not really good content. So, how do you think that's going to affect these kids as they grow up? Okay, Armani says more young boys exposed to adult websites, and this affects their ability to bond with girls. Yeah, I mean that's definitely true. Like as kids, we got the little scramble channel thing, or if your parents had like satellite TV, you have to wait until nighttime and you might turn on that channel. But like these kids now, they can access anything at the drop of a dime, and um,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a whole new landscape in terms of like young boys being able to go onto adult websites, like you said, just at the drop of a hat, they could jump on these sites with, no control of the parents. The parents aren't really watching over this kind of stuff. I mean, they should be. They should really put blocks on their kids' phones so they can't, visit sites like that. But I think a lot of parents, they just don't really know that much about technology to even limit the kids' capabilities.
exactly. So imagine a group of young boys addicted to hardcore pornography, and then the young girls, the material they're being presented with is not much better. They have like these women that are almost like porn stars singing songs, Sexy Red, Megan the Stallion, and these girls can access that immediately. So you have a generation of people on pornographic content who have like no kind of like natural affection for each other. Everything's just like really vulgar.
Yeah, and I think it really changes the interpersonal dynamics of kids when you're exposed to like you said, hardcore pornography at a very young age. You're kind of gonna, go in your own world, isolate yourself, zone out on that kind of content because it's so like stimulating, especially for like a young boy, preteen, teenage boy, when you have all the hormones going on and everything. So there needs to be more monitoring by the parents. Parents need to be more involved in the technology that they're letting their kids use because the internet is a pretty scary place when there's no guards or no checks on it. Kids need to be kept in check by their parents, and I feel like parents are really dropping the ball right now.
Yeah, I mean, all this digital world is taking over so quick that a lot of parents they have no idea how to handle all of that. Yeah, like what you remember like how when we grew up, at least like in terms of music, there were a lot more like love songs and things of that nature, but that's almost completely disappeared. So like even men and women having those kind of like romantic relationships, that's almost disappeared and it's replaced with like just something completely different.
Well, and two, also like the content of the music now is much more explicit. You've got like what's that song? Something about your body from Ed Sheeran. He's talking about, I woke up and my bed sheets smell like you. And it's like, how are kids gonna take this stuff? This like raw material that's not being censored. Because when we were growing up, they had if you remember those labels on the CDs, like explicit content. And I remember my parents would try to police that. Like, I'd have like, Biggie's album and it had the explicit content sticker on it. So, like, once my mom saw that, she's like, oh, you can't listen to this. Whether that's right or wrong, who's to say? but at least they were, my parents were trying to police us as kids and trying to keep us in check to a certain degree.
Exactly. I mean, at least they were trying, and at least like in the mainstream, like you couldn't really cuss. Like shows didn't really have cussing like that. You know, music on the radio, they had the censored version, but now it's just like all out craziness.
Well, and then, yeah, also talk about technology like Spotify. If a little kid has access to Spotify, all the versions of the songs are all explicit on Spotify. So it's like there's no boundaries, there's no checks and balances by the parents and the kids anymore. The kid just has access to the internet, and since they have access to the internet, they literally have access to anything they want to look up, whether that's censored or not censored.
Right. And video games are becoming like increasingly more and more realistic. Like, like GTA 5 or Red Dead Redemption 2. And a lot of parents are letting their kids play these games. So imagine like a kid growing up on violent music, playing a video game where it's like a realistic depiction of you shooting somebody. You know, that's why you're
Yeah,
starting.
like Call of Duty or something like that.
Exactly. So Armani says, big tech will never be regulated as long as it generates money. Parents are just as distracted by social media. So how can they help their kids?
Great
So
point. Great point. Yeah, and then that's really the problem is that the parents are just as distracted by the social media as the kids are. So it's like, it's a two-way street. It's going both ways. The parents are obsessed with social media, the kids are obsessed with social media. It's like, where does it end?
Well, it's kind of like, the days of Noah. Like, you can't save everybody. You can try to do the best with yours. Like, I would say, okay, you have to be more proactive as a parent and say, hey, let's go outside. Let's go take a walk. Let's go to the playground. And maybe get in contact with other parents who are also open to doing the same thing. There's going to be a lot of people who are sucked into the digital world, but I also feel like people are kind of like followers of trends. So if they start seeing you and a couple of other parents like regularly having your kids go outside, they might start joining the wave.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, another thing that we kind of touched on in our last conversation, the one that got cut off due to the technical issues, we're talking about how it's tough as you get older to maintain friendships. And what were you saying about that, Kevin?
Oh yeah, I mean, as you get older, like when you're younger, you have forced social environments like school. Maybe your parents made you go to church or whatever. But as you get older, you have the choice. So a lot of people choose not to go to church, and you don't have to go to school, or you're just too old to go. Or you're never too old to go, but you're kind of like, well, nah, I don't really want to spend this much money going to school. So it's like, where do you go to meet people? Like even at restaurants, like you can't really talk to people. People have their social groups they go there with, and they don't want you butting in.
Yeah, and I think it also is largely dependent on geography. Like in the New York area, people are more likely to like just go up to a stranger and strike up a conversation. But like my time in LA, everyone was all grouped off into their own cliques. So like you go to a party and everyone's already separated and no one's really mingling. It's just everyone in their own worlds, which is kind of strange, but you just start to get used to it after a while.
Exactly. So Armani brought up the point. We're at the point where it is okay for to show a young man giving the devil a lap dance. Yeah, that's that little Nas X song. But Justin Timberlake recently had a song where I think it's called like "No Angel on the Dance Floor" or something, and these people are transformed into like demons in the music video. So that just goes to show you where the technology, the music is. It's not even they're not even hiding it anymore.
No, they're not hiding it at all. I mean, they're being very like blatant about satanic kind of themes. Like you have artists like Doja Cat. That song, I want to say it's that song "Woman." She's like looks like a demon, and like there's all this really weird stuff going on in the video. Have you seen that one?
So I've seen like a small clip of one where she's like transformed into like a demon or something, but I don't really watch like a bunch. Once I see that, I might look at a second and then switch it off. You know.
Yeah, because it's not really content you want to take in, and like even some other pop stars, like this newer girl, I think her name's Sabrina Carpenter. She has this
Mm.
one video, I think it's the track "Feather," and like just people are getting wiped out. Like these boys are following her, and like she's got a like really sexy outfit on, and then all of a sudden a truck comes by and kills them. And then the next scene, she's like in a gym, and all these guys are trying to get her attention. And then all of a sudden, the guys start beating each other up to the point that they kill each other.
Mm.
And then the next scene, she's in the elevator with a guy, and she kind of is very like seductive to him and like grabs him by his tie, but then the elevator door closes and he gets killed by the elevator. So it's like all this death, all this murder in pop music is becoming normalized. And I think it's got to affect the kids that are watching it.
Yeah, it's extremely hard to police the content now because they could just go on a tablet and watch it. You say, "Oh, I got it blocked on your phone," but their little friend at school, their parents don't have a block on their phone, so your child is held together with their kid watching it. And they're being flooded with this devilish, demonic content, ultra violent video games, ultra violent music. Like a rapper just recently got killed. I think it was like Coolio or something like that. Just got shot up. But
Yeah.
this was a rapper that was like filming videos at his enemies' graves, like kind of mocking them. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
Like that's something that some of these modern drill rappers do, like film themselves at their enemies, the other side's graves, and they're mocking them, desecrating the grave. Like, there's not much further you can go at this point.
Yeah, and you got to wonder, why is all this satanic material allowed to be on TV? Like, why should kids be able to watch a Doja Cat video where she's becoming a demon or the devil or something like that? Like, why should little kids have access to this kind of content? Because I know when we were growing up, if your parents saw you watching something on TV that was too mature, they'd turn it off, or they'd put a block on the TV station so you can't watch it. Like if you had satellite or whatever, you get a lot of stations. They would actually put locks on the channel so the kids couldn't watch the more adult kind of material. But now, like we're talking about, the internet is on every device. It's on every tablet. It's on every cell phone. Every phone is a smartphone. So it's like every phone is a miniature laptop in and of itself, and you have access to like all this adult content, whether that be, music videos, video games, movies. You have access to all of this stuff, and it's not being policed by the parents. Because, like Imani's talking about, the parents are asleep at the wheel too. They're just as distracted by the social media as the kids are. So it's like, as a society, where do we go from? Like, how do we fix this as a society? Is the question.
Yeah, I mean, like it's crazy when the parents are social media zombies too. I even see videos of like parents like filming themselves disciplining, whipping their kids or whatever. It's like is nothing sacred anymore. Like that's something that you should keep in house. Like, why are you putting your kid getting disciplined for everybody to see? And in regards to like the demonic content, all of these devices are, pretty much it is what it says it is, programming, like back to your regularly scheduled programming. It's a way to transmit the values that they want you to have, which is lawlessness.
And it's really, yeah, there's really like no values in today's age. Everything, like you said, there's all this demonic influence in music videos, movies, games, and like that stuff gets into kids. They don't even think about it. They're just taking it in, and that's got to affect people long term. Like I'm glad that when me and you were kids, I'm glad that our parents were like more on the ball with like what we watched on TV, the kind of music we listened to. It might have seemed annoying as a kid to be like policed by your parents, but it showed that they cared. At least it showed that the parents cared. Now the parents are just checked out on social media themselves. So it's like the parents are now part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for you to tell your kids not to do it if you're doing it too. Like they see you on the phone all day or on the computer just scrolling. How are you going to tell them, hey, go outside? But you're doing this, you're doing what you're telling them not to do. So, you,
Exactly.
you have to start by example.
Yeah, there's just really poor examples these days because the parents are just so checked out. They're into their, TikTok stream. They're into just like scrolling through Instagram, looking at their friends' pictures or whatever. It's really just a lot of mindless junk. Like, what are you really doing when you're scrolling on Instagram through like, pictures of pretty girls or uh, cars, trucks, like whatever you're scrolling through, like what is this material really doing for you? Like, is this material serving you at all in any kind of positive way other than just as a distraction?
Yeah, exactly. And, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like the interactions a lot of kids are going to have is just seeing a text bubble. Like, oh, I remember when I said this to you on IM. Like, how cheap is that versus like, okay, say you as a young boy, it's like, oh, I remember holding this girl's hand and we were walking, through the city. You know what I mean? Just something like that, like
Yeah.
something that embraces all your senses, but you're trading that in for the convenience of a little text bubble.
Yeah, and and to bring it back to grade school, I know, friendships are made from a very young age, definitely in grade school. But like for me, it got weird as I started to get a little older. I went to a K through 8 magnet school, so it was like there was no middle school. It was just K through 8, but I remember like the friends that I had in, let's say, K through like sixth grade. I had certain friends, and all of a sudden in seventh grade, certain types of kids would not want to hang out with you anymore. Like it was a racial kind of a thing where like all of the black and Puerto Rican kids would sit at their own lunch table, and since you're white, oh, you're corny now, you can't sit with us. So all of a sudden it just felt like I was being rejected just purely based on race, based on the color of my skin. And it was really upsetting because it's like, okay, so now where do I go? Like I ended up sitting with a lot of the Asian kids at lunch because they were also rejected by the cooler kids. And so, but it had a really lasting effect on me because I always think back, I'm like, why do kids have to be so mean?
Yeah, I mean, like kids, they can be really ignorant because they don't have the context of what their choices do to how their choices affect others. You know what I mean? They don't have that experience. But like as they get older, they'll start understanding. But I wonder, like, since they're trapped in the digital world and it's so easy to huddle in these little groups, these segregated groups, are they ever going to come to that conclusion, like, hey, this isn't right? When they can just like fall into like these racist groups. You know what I mean? Like these racist chat rooms, racist message boards.
Yeah, yeah. And like, especially in the South, place like, let's say, Alabama. I remember one time I used to be in a hardcore punk band and we were touring down to Florida and back up the East Coast. And we had a show in Alabama. And I remember we walked into a Waffle House. Waffle houses are pretty popular in the South. But we walked into this Waffle House, and I hear, someone drop the N word, and I was just like, wow, like this is different. Like you could just say that like in public, and people are okay with it. It just kind of blew my mind being from the Northeast and all that. Being a Yankee.
Yeah, it's the regional differences are real. Yeah, Monty brings an interesting point. It is the mind that is being programmed. How can we have a felon be able to run for president of USA? What kind of message does that send? Well, I kind of feel like all of these presidents and high level politicians, they're all criminal. So, in some extent, some are just able to get away with it more. Like, yeah, I really wish I could be into politics, but it seems like no matter who you vote in, the rich is always coming out ahead.
Yeah, it's like you ever listen to that comedian George Carlin?
Yeah, I've heard some of his stuff.
Yeah, he used to be real big into political rants. And yeah, one thing he said that stuck with me still to this day is that this country has been bought and sold long ago. So it's like you think you're voting for this person on the right or this person on the left, but money is what makes everything go around. And this land has already been sold to the rich. And, the working class don't have much of a shot.
Yeah, I agree, and it's increasingly becoming that way because most people can't even buy a house anymore. They can't afford college. They can barely afford groceries. Like, well, and if you can't afford to educate yourself and you're stuck working like a $15 an hour McDonald's job, how are you like going to even, build anything? Like, you can't buy a house, can't
Right.
afford education. Like, how do you get ahead at that point?
No, I mean, people's options are being more and more limited. And I guess, one good thing about the technology is that because kids are always on these phones, always on these tablets, they get really good with the technology. So, like, let's say someone wants to become a programmer and they're on their phone all the time, doing JavaScript exercises and stuff like that. You could potentially get really good at programming from a young age because you're so immersed into the technology. But that's like the positive side of the technology that you can kind of, turn it into a career long term based on what you're studying as a kid.
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like parents and even the kids themselves, they're gonna have to be more self motivated and look at entrepreneurial endeavors and teach themselves skills using things like YouTube. Monty said teen years are a developmental stage in which kids are learning how to socialize based on what they see in society. It's not personal, trust me. Yeah, like you really learn how your actions start affecting others, because your brain is developing more. You have more experiences, so you start developing like the context for your actions. So that's where you can learn, like, hey, maybe I shouldn't say this to this person because they reacted that way, and you start reining it in. But if you're isolated in your tablet all day around like other like racist incels or whatever who are echo chambering your thoughts, like, do you ever really come to the conclusion like, hey, these thoughts are wrong?
Yeah, and like you said, echo chamber, that's a huge problem nowadays because it's like you could be subscribed to certain Reddits that are, dedicated to like certain types of politics or certain types of famous people. And people just kind of like follow this content blindly. And they're all like, it's a group where everyone's agreeing with each other, everyone's agreeing with each other. But where is like the objective viewpoint overarching the whole thing? Like, how can you truly be objective when you're in these echo chambers, just hyping each other up, basically?
Yeah, that's a great point about technology because at least when like you're forced to meet in person, you have to deal with people who don't share your same viewpoints. Whereas with the digital world, you just filter out people who have a contrary, just block them. And now you just have a bunch of people who have, agreeable opinions to yours. So, you can easily like fall into the confirmation bias where you're just around people who agree with you and you never have to come across a dissenting opinion. You could just immediately block it.
Yeah, I think that's a major problem with nowadays because, like, when we were kids, you were exposed to everything and you had a choice on what to focus on. And, largely that was dictated by what your parents were letting you read, what your parents were letting you watch. But now, with all the safeguards out the window, a kid can access anything he wants to online. It's easy to just seek out your opinion and try to find your opinion in different areas and just say, oh, well, this must be true because all these people agree with me. But like you're saying, it's just confirmation bias. Like, just because a bunch of people agree with you doesn't mean it's true or doesn't mean it's right in society.
Yeah, that's the thing about the internet is like you don't necessarily have to be right. You can just find the group that shares that opinion you already have, and you're just gonna gravitate towards that group because that's where you feel comfortable. But like if all of y'all have these
Yeah,
dangerous beliefs, nobody's checking y'all really.
that's the thing. I think it's really toxic ultimately. I think, only hearing your opinion reverberated back to you is detrimental to growth. It's not allowing people to develop, more widespread opinions and more healthy opinions on things when you can see the whole picture. You can see the side from the left, the side from the right, up, down, backward. Like, when we were growing up, we'd see all sides of a situation and then make the best choice based on the information we're given. But now you could just totally isolate yourself with, whatever you want to believe to be true. You can believe that to be true and find, thousands of other people who all agree with you. And you just get into these, like, compliment fests like Reddit, just people agreeing with each other. At some point, I think it's really not a good thing, and that's part of the part of the negative part of technology being so widespread is that people are just going to zone into these groups, whether it's a meetup group, whether it's a Reddit group. People are going to find these outlets where they're finding people that have the same opinion as them. But then where's the objectivity, Kevin? Where's the objectivity?
Yeah, because they're just gonna get downvoted into oblivion or blocked or kicked out the group by the admin who says, "Oh, okay, we don't like that kind of opinion," and that's very dangerous. And the algorithm, like we mentioned, like in previous episodes, it feeds you what you've already shown that you like. So, okay, say you're into that red pill content, the algorithm is going to feed you more and more of that, and you're going to see the worst of women, and then you're going to start hating women, and then you're into a message board where it's a bunch of guys who have had bad experiences with women, and that's how a potential incel who eventually lashes out, that's potentially how they get born. You know what I mean? There's nobody that steps in and says, "Hey, maybe you need to change your outlook. Maybe you need to change what you're doing." It's just like confirming what you already believe, and a lot of times, the material is hateful.
And I mean, it kind of memory jogs me back in time to remembering when, like, the Columbine shooting happened. It's like, what were the parents doing? Like, were the parents, at all aware of their kids being, like, so violent and listening to, like, really violent, scary music? They're dressing up in, like, trench coats, I think. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on, but I feel like the parents, they just weren't paying attention to the kids. So then the kids end up, shooting up a school because they're unchecked. No one's checking on them.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us take our own parents for granted. We may have hated when they were looking at what we were doing and blocking us from certain material. But now you can see why. But there's a lot of parents who they want to be the cool parent, or they're just flat out neglectful, so they don't know, they don't care what their kid is doing. And it's just like the internet, in a lot of instances, is kind of like the garbage dump of humanity. Like, you can find like all of the worst of humanity at your fingertips. Like,
Right, right. Yeah, that's ultimately that's the problem of technology, and that's the problem of the internet. You could find, like you have like KKK groups, white supremacist groups, like you could find people that are hanging out online that have all these, same kind of beliefs about, Jewish people and et cetera, et cetera. You could find these groups if you seek them out, which that's what's kind of scary about the modern internet.
exactly. Thanks for tuning in, Armani. We'll definitely catch you on the next show. But yeah, like what you were saying is, you can find these groups, and you can also be anonymous. Like, you can quietly slip in, say, "Hey, I agree with you." Oh, okay, yeah, let's. We don't like these people, and then y'all can say, "Hey, we're gonna act like this, and this," and you're not gonna get the scrutiny of, hey, why is Bob always with his white robe on, meeting with these other people with their white robes on? You know what I mean? Like, before, you
Exactly.
have to publicly go to the location. Now you can just quietly slip in, and nobody knows you're a part of these groups, unless they got access to the database or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so like you can silently be a racist online and seek out material that goes along with your worldview and just your general opinions about different races and things like that. That's, I mean, really the toxic part of the internet is that these groups are left kind of unchecked. I think because of free speech, we allow these groups to exist online, but it's pretty dangerous when you're looking at stuff like ISIS and like these militant groups that are violent. Like they have a presence online too, and pretty much every group of every kind has a presence online. So like if you want to seek out really toxic, really negative stuff, you can definitely find it. It just might take you a minute, but it's out there on the internet for sure.
Yeah, it kind of lets you know, like, there's a lot of society as a sham. Like, like, somehow they'll never get rid of the ISIS groups or whatever. But if you have a movie streaming site, since that's taking money from corporation pockets, and they'll shut that down immediately. But somehow, like, the KKK meetup, that never gets shut down.
Exactly. I mean, that's the weird thing about the internet. These groups are left unchecked, and they start to grow movements because, like you said, you could silently be a racist online. No one's gonna know. Oh, Bob is wearing a white robe and he's burning crosses with his buddies. It's not like that. It's just someone's on Reddit, and they're talking to certain types of people in certain types of groups, forming certain types of opinions. And I think that's really the toxic side of technology and the toxic side of the internet. And it's like an inconvenient truth.
Exactly. And I spend a ton of time on the internet, but I recognize, like, me myself, I need to, get out and have more of those richer interactions. As it's going to be initially uncomfortable because I'm an introvert, and it's easy to just stay at home. But I can't, I can't really think of some ultra dope text conversation I've had. You know what I mean? It doesn't
Right.
take memories in my mind.
Yeah, like you're saying earlier, like when you think back on your childhood, you're not going to remember, oh yeah, I remember I was texting John and we had this great text conversation. Like that stuff is not going to be remembered, but you're going to remember when you were playing basketball with your neighbor and you finally beat him for the first time.
Exactly. But yeah, we're getting to the top of the hour. I think this is a good place to end. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Really just, I think, like Amani was saying, she loves George Carlin. Yeah, George Carlin's great. He has a lot of really interesting views on the political landscape in this country. I know he's been dead a while, but you can find a lot of his stuff on YouTube. He's a pretty funny guy. Only thing I guess I'll just plug real quick. I'm teaching drum lessons in Suffolk County, Long Island, New York, and you can find out more information about me on my website. That's www.brianrussick.com. That's spelled BRIANRUSSICK.com.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We'll catch y'all next time. Peace.